So, what we're going to do now, and I want to recognize, because we're here to view the movie and to talk about it, but we talk about entrepreneurs, and we talk about feeling for the community, feeling for the state, feeling for manufacturing, feeling about our own selves and how we can improve ourselves. There was a gentleman that took a risk who said, you know, we got to bring this movie to Schenectady. We got to bring the movie to Schenectady. We got to talk about it, because it's important that we embrace the opportunities that exist in our community. And I just want to really go off script, but thank the gentleman that brought us tonight, made this happen, and I want you to recognize Chad Putnam. He's the Deputy City Clerk, correct, Chad? Of the City of Schenectady. And he has a lot of get up and go and a lot of passion for this community and passion to be successful as a community. So we're very, very pleased. We did introduce our panel prior, and again in your book is a little more complete piece to this. But let me, for opening's sake, want to call on our Congressman for some comment and overview. And I encourage you, if you have some questions, and volunteers, Chad, are going to be going out. And if you have a question, you want to write it down on your card now, or even a thought, please do, and we'll try to include that into this conversation. But I thought we would lead with asking Congressman Tonko, who obviously as a congressman is not only looking over his constituents here in Schenectady and other areas of this great region in New York State, but as a congressman, obviously he's looking from a perspective of the entire United States of America. And he sat with you and watched this movie about manufacturing, all the ins and outs, the positives and negatives. I'm real interested, Congressman, in your overall feelings like mine. I don't know if they were all over the map, but how do you feel sitting here as our congressman here in Schenectady in the United States of America?
A number of things come to mind watching the film. One is that we have within our system of government a tremendous opportunity to determine our destiny. And history speaks to us in very powerful terms. And if we just chart statistics, as were mentioned in this film, I think that we can see where the investment shrunk in proportion. And it's about investing in research, in workforce development, in education, in infrastructure. And for us to have moved into a situation where we allowed for special interests to take such a grip on policy development is really pushing the moral compass in the wrong direction. You can't help but draw from this film a bottom line interpretation that if you want businesses to do well in this country, give them customers. And you give them customers by empowering the masses of us, the middle income community. Purchasing power isn't there. People are finding more and more that they're either flatlined or dipping south, while a relative few are absorbing all the economic growth of this country. And we can't sustain that. You know, it's almost like history from the late 19th century repeating itself, where the robber barons would place the bags of special interests onto the desks of a few, and they would determine policy that enabled that special interest to do well. And at that point in our history, we saved capitalism from its excesses. And I think that this film tells us that we have not invested. Since about 79 or 80, we saw relief given to those most comfortable. And we've avoided investing appropriately. And while we cut programs and investments, we also saddled the costs of that government onto the bulk of the population, the middle class. And I think that has caused undue consequences in the process. I think Lee Shepard in the film really puts it together beautifully. I think she highlights it in very expert terms and in very straightforward talk. We know what we have to do, and we didn't do it. And complacency set in. And it's about workers, it's about the dignity of work, it's about investing in the workforce of the future. I started my day today at OTEC and was surrounded by a number of high school students who are coming up with phenomenal projects that are high-tech, clean energy, innovation related. And the investment we're making there in their high school college hookup, where they're earning college credits, it had business people from GE, Global Foundries, various spin-offs in the area that were impressed. They were overwhelmed with the intellect of this young adult community. They're worthy of our investment. Someone fed us the resources to dream the American dream. And how dare we tarnish that for the future generations? So I think it's all about investing in America. I found it very interesting that we opened with a ballpark scenario. Many of those owners sitting perched on the top of the economic ladder come to government and say, if you don't give us a lot of cash, we're moving. We could have invested in Detroit manufacturing facilities, but we chose to invest in powerful interests that have powerful ways to charge you a lot for a hot dog and pay a baseball player $8 million while you struggle to get a teacher $40,000. So it's all about our priorities. What do we want to do? And as a nation, have we been spoiled by excess and allowed it to happen when we, the masses, could make a difference?
But certainly some of those, not to debate the factors of the wealthy owning excessive things, many of those were self-made too. Those people invested their time in consumption.
You can invest your time. No one is standing against capitalism and success. But when the excesses cause such a split and divide between the 1% gaining 95% of the post-recession recovery, that's unsustainable. And there was always a balance in this country. There was always a threshold. Yeah, you did really well and you scored on top, but there wasn't the huge discrepancy you see today, 30-1. I think that is sinful. And there should be better tax policy.
Part of the film, a great deal part of the film, and Congressman just talked about young people and being the entrepreneurs of the future and looking to invest in our young. Next to you sits the gentleman that owns Gather's Gourmet Granola, Alessandro Zerbini. And I only can think about where I met Alessandro was a couple years ago at our Green Market on a Sunday morning, where he was presenting his product. And it's incredible what has happened over this last few years, where he, as an entrepreneur, recognized an opportunity, not assured that people would come and purchase, but he was looking to grow his company and invest in his company and made in America, make it work here in Schenectady. Alessandro, your thoughts on what you saw in the movie, and especially related to the entrepreneurs that spoke here, that recognized that opportunity and reinvested their time or skill or talents to be successful?
I feel like I'm in a particularly unique industry in the United States. Most of the breakfast foods, and particularly cereal, is made in the United States. So almost all of my competitors are North American. The majority are American, but there are a limited few. So perhaps my situation is a little bit unique. I'm not competing against the foreign competition like the welding company in the movie. That doesn't mean that I don't feel have the same feelings that they do about this type of competition. Mine's just more directed towards Kellogg's and General Mills. I feel like all entrepreneurs, though, no matter what industry they're in, they share the same tendencies towards risk. Entrepreneurs they have to be risk takers. They have to go out on a limb, and they have to convince people to believe in an idea that they can produce something that people will want before they've ever done it. And unless they've got very deep pockets themselves, they need to convince their friends and family to get behind them on the project. And that can be challenging. So these are people that have to be very convincing, as well as have the capacity to make a leap of faith in their own wherewithal to produce what they envision. In my case, that was granola cereal, and in the case of other companies, it's anything from, I've got a close friend that has a company that produces insulation made out of organic materials using mushrooms, which is going to compete worldwide to do everything from styrofoam replacement and shipping to insulating houses to filling surfboards. There's enormous opportunity for American innovators to produce brilliant technologies right here in the United States, as well as all sorts of consumer products. They just need to harness their own intelligence and capacities and convince others that they have what it takes to be successful.
Good. Appreciate it. Moving over to Trudy Lerner, who is representing Superpower. You might drive down 890 and look either right to the left and see the facility with the big name Superpower. Interesting manufacturing here in Schenectady. It's owned by a large international company. And Trudy, you were part of that whole resurgence of Superpower into this community and beginning and bringing attention and talking about it and its opportunity that it affords us here in this community, and then taking what it was at that time going to manufacture, but is manufacturing today. Did you get a sense in the movie that we can be the America that we want to be in manufacturing and not just be the former leader, but continue to be the leader in manufacturing here in the United States?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Superpower was formed out of Intermagnetics General Corporation, which is a company that was formed out of GE in 1971. So we have our roots in the United States. Today, we are owned by a Japanese company. And so, as we realized that Intermagnetics was trying to sell the company and looking for a new home, we had some concerns about what was that going to mean for us being foreign owned. The technology that we are based on is making high temperature superconductor wire, very good for energy efficiency, so there are lots of benefits for many different types of technologies. Was something that would be good for the world, and as we were looking to expand on that, we were able to build up the technology from the technology that we licensed with the people that we were able to hire first from around the world, bring them into Schenectady. So we have an international base of workers in our company. It really is our hope to keep the technology in the United States. We have built up a market all around the world. We probably sell 2/3 of our products to around the world, 30 different countries and 6 different continents, and we're very proud of that. But we're also very proud of being part of Schenectady, being part of the United States, and that really is our hope to stay there. I think what will enable us to do that is the work that we've done together with academia, for workforce development. We've programs with the community college, with Union College, and other colleges around. It's the ingenuity of the American people, the innovation that they're able to bring to bear to these high technologies that I think gives us the edge and enables us to be the leading company in this particular industry around the world. But that's what we have to keep on working on so that we maintain that leadership, because there are many other organizations around the world who are getting into this field now too. They have governments that are supporting their efforts, and those are the things that we have to keep looking at to make sure that we can maintain that lead and enable us to be able to stay in the United States.
Thank you, Trudy. I'm so glad you brought up the fact the partnership that you had with the community college, Schenectady County Community, and Union. in developing and looking to that future workforce. And it's so critical to not only the company's investment here, but the investment into the workforce to keep our young people here and employment and jobs right here in Schenectady. Congressman, you don't have all the direction coming from Washington tonight. We're joined at the panel with from the National Alliance for American Manufacturing, and he hails from Washington, D.C., and he's the president of the State and Government Affairs for that organization. And Brian Lombardozzi is joined us. And Brian, I'm not sure if you have seen this movie in past, but your general reaction from your seat with the Alliance.
I mean, quite honestly, I think this movie is a really good job in telling a story that our organization tries to communicate on a pretty regular basis. Scott Paul, who at the time was our director, was now our president, spoke a lot in this film, as did one of our field organizers, who was Blue Wilson, who is one of the guys who showed here on the Detroit plant. Blue does a lot of our organizing around policy issues in the state of Michigan on manufacturing. And one of the things that we try to communicate on a regular basis is that American manufacturing is alive and well in the United States. It's not what it used to be, but there is hope and possibility for it to keep growing. And what I work on with my team, on my federal counterparts as well, is making sure that our public officials and are basically doing the best they can to make sure that our companies that are creating jobs here in this country actually are making sure that the American companies, the American entrepreneurs have a level playing field to play on. And one of the things that the trade lawyer in the movie brought up that I thought was really important when he was talking about people he used to work for, saying that, as American business, as American manufacturer, I can compete against anybody in the world, any other company in the world. I just can't compete against other governments. And that's one of the things we spend some time trying to look at, and looking at the different access to our market that other countries are having, and the role that their governments are maybe having, the free money that could be financing some of the projects that are competing with infrastructure projects in the United States. As the welding story told you about, the stuff coming from, originally Florida, but then from China, that was really undercutting what he was doing by $3 and really trying to figure out how those economics really worked out. Well, when you really look into those policies, there's a lot of things that happen on an international stage and a national stage that, people manipulate their currency, and certain countries value their currency lower to make sure that their goods are really cheap for other people to buy, and other people's goods in their country are really expensive for their community to purchase. So we're always looking for solutions and working with public officials to kind of address the currency manipulation. Have the United States actually look at that. I will say that the Congressman has been a supporter of that, so thank you for that. And we also do a lot of work to make sure that when U.S. taxpayer dollars are being spent on infrastructure projects in this country, that they're really going to put people to work in this country, that they're looking to buy iron, steel, and manufactured goods here in the United States when they're building bridges, and when they're putting up highways, and they're putting up public buildings. And without the sort of support to kind of create that marketplace, manufacturing wouldn't be where it is today. The United States government has always made sure that in its transportation projects that it's been buying iron, steel, and manufactured goods here in the United States. And that goes for transportation and rail cars and buses. There's a lot of that happens here in New York State. And without that choice by the U.S. government, I'm not sure we would still have the footprint in this country of a steel industry, of the different rail car manufacturers that exist. So we work on a daily basis to make sure that, for all of the entrepreneurs in this country and for all of the people who work for them and the other large companies that are manufacturing, that our public officials are making the right decisions. And some of that is education. So we're not only there to educate the public, we're there to educate the people they elect to make sure that they're making the right decisions to make sure that America does have a big manufacturing future.
Very good, Brian. Thank you. And I think key things you indicated, that open dialogue, and I think that was part of what Congressman Tonko was talking about too, is that looking at our policy and addressing those policy issues up front and recognizing impact, the cause and effect a certain policy, and having the American public join us in that conversation, in that dialogue, is critical. I'm feeling a little better. I put on my New Balance to go try to exercise, and I'm feeling much better knowing that they are manufactured in Maine versus some other popular brands that I see out and about in the gym. So it is about ourselves, and we look to try to do business here in our own community if we can. Next, Dr. Quentin Bullock from Schenectady County Community College. Our community college system in the United States, Dr. Bullock, has really begun in earnest the direction of workforce development and recognizing what the entrepreneur, our manufacturers need. Could you reflect on that in basis to the film and the discussion of our workforce and what needs to be done for the future?
Clearly, the community college is a leading entity in everyone's community. It's important for the community college to stay abreast and to work collaboratively with business and industry to identify where are the workforce training needs and to work collaboratively with developing new programs or retraining individuals to be able to assume new jobs. Because when industries are coming into our communities, it's important that they have a workforce in line to support the growing demand and to be able to satisfy that demand. And more community colleges are taking lead roles in working collaboratively in preparing the workforce and getting young persons very young introduced to manufacturing technology, because the old manufacturing technology is not the same as it is today. And to show them the new technologies as a part of their learning experience and to begin to stimulate that interest in them to have an interest in a field that's related to work within our communities or within our states as a whole. So it's important for the community college, as noted here, to stay abreast, be available to do both the credit and the non-credit training to prepare persons for specific jobs, to assist business and industry in meeting their workforce needs, and to continue to change whatever is needed to be responsive to ensure there's a ready workforce to assume jobs at local business and industry.
Thank you, Dr. Bullock. It was interesting retrieving some of the questions. You just answered a very nice question that was just a general question put by one of our audience. It said, do Americans still possess the necessary skills to efficiently produce goods to trade in a worldwide marketplace? And where can prospective middle-class Americans acquire these skills, and what skills are they? Generally, Dr. Bullock addressed that through Schenectady County Community College, as well as the overall development of that effort. And I think it's so critically important that we recognize that today's needs are far different than they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. If I generalized that pretty well, Dr. Bullock, in regards to your comments?
You did. We can give an example. Let's just take General Electric. When they started the battery technology, it was important for us to develop a program in alternative energy technology, but to ensure that the program includes all of the clear skills. We worked with the company to align the skill sets in the curriculum. On an ongoing basis with an advisory committee working with the department to review the curriculum and skill sets to reaffirm the curriculum is on track, the skill sets are what we need, and there are additional skills that we want you to also ensure the curriculum covers so that the persons are able to respond. The same model with Superpower. And Superpower is developing the nanoscale material technology curriculum, working collaboratively with Union College. They indicated the specific skills and the abilities that an individual needed to have, and to ensure that they had the basic foundations and aligning it with the math, the writing, the reading, the analytical, the critical thinking skills, and the ability to incorporate those sets responds to what the needs of Superpower to ensure they have the workforce that goes along not only with Superpower, but also with the global foundries industry. So
it comes from that collaboration and discussions with the employer, with the faculty, with business industries. All of those components together develop a core curriculum that offers specific skills, skill sets, the abilities to do different activities that respond to the workforce needs within the industry.
Right, and just to elaborate on that a little bit more, it's basically really working together with the college, because they certainly couldn't put those programs together without the input of the industry. And we've really benefited enormously from that, because as we need new technicians in our business, we can go to the community college and have students that have graduated from the program and are pretty well set to start that job and contribute immediately, instead of needing a much longer time to get up to speed.
Thank you, Trudy. Dr. Bullock. I want to turn our attention now to our representative from the Business Council of New York State. As you know, we opened up prior to American Made movie. We had a short clip from the Business Council and focusing in on some of our manufacturing here in New York State. And I was very, very proud to see Nancy Gold from Tough Traveler on that film, being in her store today and looking at her product and that Made in USA label. Very, very proud to have her in Schenectady and making that USA made product. I know Ken Pukowski, our Business Council representative, Vice President for Government Affairs. Ken, you and the Business Council have focused on not just Made in America, but specifically here in New York State. Your reaction to the film and the importance of manufacturing plays right here in our state.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Charlie. I also want to say, I think it was great how many people showed up for this tonight. I thought at the risk of coming in and talking to them in the room, I think the turnout is just fantastic. It's we're glad there's people out there that want to hear the message that we're here to talk about today. The Business Council, we represent about 3,000 companies across New York. About 1,000 are manufacturers. It's from the Tough Travelers and Passano Paints and Hene Reel, who's the other gentleman on the film today. We represent some of the largest manufacturers in the world, IBM, GE, and others. We put that short film, we did a couple versions of it. We put that together about a year ago for a couple reasons. One is we wanted to remind people, both general public and elected officials, that manufacturing still is in New York. It's a very important part of the state's economy. People tend to forget that when manufacturing is dead. Manufacturing is here, and it's very important. The other thing we wanted to remind people is when you hear, particularly in talking to policymakers, state legislators where we work, I probably hear it in Washington as well, a lot of concern about the disappearing middle class. Without people making the next connection, what are you really talking about? In New York State, over the last 20 years or so, we have lost about about a half a million manufacturing jobs. And we did a study looking at wage data. Manufacturing jobs in upstate New York, on average, pay about $17,000 more a year than the average non-manufacturing private sector job. These are good jobs, they're great jobs. In a lot of places, particularly in upstate New York, once they're gone for good. I grew up in Fulton, New York. We saw Nestle's go, never replaced. We saw Miller come and go, not replaced. These are good jobs, and too often I think we're our own worst enemies, that we like the jobs, but we forget the fact that there's an employer there. You need the employer to have the employment. And we do things in terms of governmental policies that makes it, I think each of those people on the film, and Nancy's here and other business reps here, will tell you it's somewhat difficult to do business in the U.S. Sometimes New York State makes it particularly difficult to do business in New York State. And every one of them will tell you, I know Passano Paints had a tremendous setback because of a particular way the state implemented a rule on the VOC content of paint. They had options, a way that they could do this, and they did it in a certain way that basically made half of their inventory obsolete, couldn't sell it. So what we do at the state level is remind, well, we have a couple missions, but one, we remind people that manufacturing here is important. And second, what New York State does in terms of energy policy, labor policy, tax policy, et cetera, really influences the ability of people to have a go at it, make a go of it in manufacturing in the state. So glad to be here. You asked about the film. What I like best about the film is they made that point, that manufacturing jobs are important, they're good paying, and when you talk about the middle class, the eroding middle class in New York State, in the U.S., that's really what you're talking about.
Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate that very much. Want to also note that one of our exhibitors today was from Newbury Knitting, which manufactures gloves and mittens and hats and so forth. Another great company, great product line, and right here in Schenectady County, they're made, and would encourage you to look for their product. I know they have a small store at their site, and they sell there, but they sell all over the world. And I mention it tonight because your hands might be cold or your head might be cold as you leave. So, Congressman, we have a question from the audience. With two philosophies, protectionist and free trade, is there one that is better benefit or outlook for the world? Or put another way, by increasing manufacturing in the United States, might there also be a benefit for all countries in the world?
Well, I think Brian said it well when he said businesses can compete against other businesses. They just can't survive if they're competing against other governments that have an unfair advantage. And I have to hope that when people set up free trade as a concept, they never believed in advancing unfair trade. I'm a member of the Fair Trade Caucus, and we continue to work on making it a reasonable outcome for American manufacturers. There is no way we can reasonably expect our manufacturing sector in this country to compete against groups that may have different outcomes with environmental guidelines, workforce guidelines. There are all these external measures and pressures that need to be brought into a fair zone when these trade agreements are struck. And when they're done in veiled secrecy, when Congress doesn't get its input, when we go forward and advance public policy within trade agreements, that's a dangerous zone. And so what we've done, and you can calculate the trade deficit in the last 15 years. It's gone out of whack. It's just grown exponentially. And so that's a real threat to our manufacturing base. I'm really proud to be serving with a group of legislators in Washington that have advanced the Make it in America agenda. And we're working on research investment, skills development investment, incentives that bring back the investment in America, and working on an agenda that will be fair in the investments we need to make. You know, advanced manufacturing is a thing of today, and we need to invest in the retrofitting of manufacturing sector so that we don't continue to see this slide. We ignored manufacturing for a long stretch of time. All we focused on, primarily as a government, I believe, was on the service sector, and there, very narrowly, on the financial service sector. We know what happened there. We turned our backs to it all, say, go do your thing. No government intervention, laissez-faire, right? And the greed took over. They invented vehicles to circumvent regulation, and we wondered why the economy was brought to its knees. And everything else, the ag economy, the ag sector, manufacturing, was ignored. And now it's catching up to us. So we need to reinvest in manufacturing, in retrofitting. Now, Sandro talked about his friends whose business I've toured. And they're a spinoff from the incubator at RPI. I know of a manufacturer in Schoharie County that I used to represent, where they went to RPI and worked with the group and said, look, how can we be more competitive so as to land the jobs or the contracts in an international setting? And they retrofitted their business, and then they went to Hudson Valley, excuse me, but they went to the local community college network. It could easily be Schenectady County Community College or Fulton Montgomery, but they went to that community college and said, look, we need to train the worker on this new automated phase of our manufacturing. And now they're doing very well in the international race. So it's about investing in tomorrow. And we can't just keep cutting our way to prosperity, all while we're giving away bucks on the top. We have to close loopholes that are not producing any trickle down, and we're still in this sense of 79 thinking, 80 thinking that there's this trickle down happening. The trickle down is pain, and it's disinvestment, and it's discrediting the investment work.
Congressman, you spoke, real quick, you mentioned advanced manufacturing.
Right.
Real quickly, real briefly, define in your advanced manufacturing. This is important, ladies and gentlemen, this advanced manufacturing.
Well, you know, I
is
think
a
some
component to our future.
I think some of the world of economies, Chuck, have gotten it before we did. They saw automation, robotics, increased productivity entering in. For some, you could make an argument in our U.S. economy that increased productivity meant laying people off, doing more with less. Where in other countries, they took that increased productivity, they made certain they brought resources down from that advancement in a balanced way and said, we're going to take that tax revenue and reinvest it. Build the skill set that we need in the new economy. Invest in the technology. Invest in the automation. Advanced manufacturing is retrofitting, putting new tools into place. If robotics are coming in, now you have a new skill set that you require. And that's where we need to be competitive. And we need a fair trade, not a free trade outcome. And we need to understand that the revenues are here in this country, but we're saddling the cost of government on the middle income community, a large percentage of us, and not investing in research, which equals jobs, in skills development, in education and higher ed, and in infrastructure, physical, capital, and human, that we need to go forward with the investments in advanced manufacturing.
I interrupted someone's comment, I know.
I think that was me.
Brian?
Yeah. One of the examples I also gave of just sort of the 70s, 80s mentality that exists just in terms of the fact that, as the congressman said, we kind of abandoned manufacturing for many years. We didn't think about it. A real-world example of this gets down to when you look at like how the government actually treats manufacturing. So, who here is? If I say the Verrazano Bridge, if you raise your hand if you've driven over it. Okay, you've paid the crazy toll that is to go over that bridge. It's also going up now too. Well, they're replacing the upper deck of that bridge, and they're using all the way they pay for it is they use the revenue taken in from those tolls. So that money doesn't necessarily have some of the strings attached that federal monies would have based on things that people fought for. So that project was bid out, and that project ended up being done now in China. So we're seeing large steel bridge decks being made in China that are basically like all steel and going to be, there's a lot of reasons why they want this design, but they're being made in China, they're being shipped over. There's fabricators, in New Jersey that would have been using steel made in New York and other places that could have easily done this work. They openly admit that it would have taken them some retooling to do, but every project for them they have to retool to do, they're trying to figure out why it happened. So we go and we sit down with the New York Department of Transportation. We sit down with MTA to try to get to the bottom of, okay, what caused this to happen? And they said to us, listen, in 1983, we wrote in a domestic steel preference into our policies of how we're going to buy that stuff. So basically that says if something's going to raise the costs more than 6%, we have an obligation to buy it from the lowest bidder, no matter where they're from. And we sat down and talked to them and had an open, honest conversation, and we all agreed at the end of the day that we're not living in the same world as we were in 1983. We didn't think about manufacturing in terms of where we're going to be buying large pieces of steel. We didn't imagine a country like China coming up with the lack of environmental regulations that exist there that companies can kind of go and do things at lower cost. Lower labor, free capital, no taxes for 5 years, and all these sort of things. So we ended up having a pretty honest conversation of we're in a dialogue currently with MTA and New York's Department of Transportation to try to figure out, how do we update the way New York does business to make sure that we can create a level playing field for manufacturers here in New York? So it's beyond just what's happening at the federal level, but states can do things, agencies can as well. But because we haven't thought about manufacturing in a long time, and now there's consumers waking up about it, it's time for us to also have, the consumers in the government who are buying things for all of us and using our money to pay for it, to let them know that we really need to figure out how to level that playing field to make sure that more of those jobs can come back to our community, instead of necessarily creating jobs in another country under conditions that we may not necessarily agree with.
Chuck, if I might just add, if I could just add, our Make It in America agenda in the House with the group of people that I've been working with includes that specific provision, that if you're going to have federal dollars for public projects, there has to be the American-made product that is incorporated into the outstanding project. So I think it's a way to, again, protect us from this unfair trade policy that's killing our deficit situation.
And it's also not necessarily an either or on the free trade of protectionism, because we're at a point where it's not black and white, it's a gray area. And in the right instances, we need to do the right choice to make sure it's fair.
If I may add one thing, I think there's a point in the movie that you hear touched on a lot in the media. A lot of talking heads like talking about it, and you frequently hear from policymakers as well about the question really comes down to why are things cheaper for American manufacturers to outsource overseas or for government contractors to bid out to companies based overseas. And while this is not always the case, there are two things that concern me a lot. And that is, America has a very long history with manufacturing, one of the longest in the industrialized world. And over the course of that time, a lot of rules have been put in place to protect two major things. One is workers, the health and safety of the workers, as well as ensuring that they get paid fair wages. And the other is the environment. You have the Clean Air Act, and now today, the United States has pretty much rid itself of acid rain as a consequence. You wouldn't want the manufacturing being done the way it's being done, for instance, with electronics in China, here in our own backyard, because it would have really bad consequences. The workers aren't being paid very much, and they're working enormous hours and getting injured, and the environment's taking a huge toll. Now, it's not right that they should be able to pollute the way they're doing and not have it show up in the prices that customers are paying. These extremely low prices are externalities that are simply not being reflected in what we're paying. But we're going to pay it down the road. If you pollute somebody else's backyard, we all live on the same planet. It will eventually come back to bite us.
Awesome, thank you. Ken, the governor released his budget today, and a great deal of discussion since his State of the State address was centered around, certainly around some incentives and improvement in the taxing process, especially to manufacturing. Could you comment on the governor's budget today and any potential impact that you see if that goes through?
Well, if nothing else, it shows as some of the other panels have said, that we're waking back up, reawakening to the importance of manufacturing. The fact that it's here, and in some cases, we've made it unnecessarily difficult for them to be here. The governor's budget does a couple things. It tries to give a manufacturer who is located in New York State a leg up on a manufacturer who isn't. I mean, if you've watched what the governor's presented on his tax policy, there's a piece in there that talks about a manufacturing tax credit based on real property taxes. It's not in there to offset the cost of property taxes, although it's a nice benefit of it. It's a way to give New York State a preferential tax treatment, if you will, for people who are located here. If all you did was cut the corporate tax rate for all manufacturers, the same proportional benefit would go to you if you were located here with staff and capital as if you were outside the state just selling into New York. So it's a way to give manufacturers a competitive advantage, if you will, if you have your capital and your people in New York State. The second thing, and again, I said earlier, we sometimes are our own worst enemies. We did about 5 years ago when the economy was bad and the state government wanted money to spend. We did something that we thought was a terrible idea, and that was put a pretty substantial tax on energy, which disproportionately hit manufacturers, which tend to be energy intensive. This budget recognizes that that does have an adverse effect. It's one of the, if you look at where New York State costs are most out of whack with just looking domestically at other states, it's the cost of property taxes, it's been the cost of energy. It expedites the phase out of what's called the Section 18A assessment. But it expedites the phase out of that tax on energy for everyone, but immediately eliminates it for manufacturers. Again, recognizing that these are valuable employers, we want to see manufacturing in the state, and sometimes we are our own worst enemies and put barriers in front of manufacturers who do want to be here, make investments here, and be profitable here.
Very good, Ken. Thank you. We have promised you all that we'll be concluded by 9 p.m., and that we will be. So in the light of that, we covered many questions in comments from our panelists, and we do thank all of the panelists for the input. But my final question to all of you, and I'd like to, it's just a brief answer, and it's a feeling, because I make no apologies. I represent the Chamber of Schenectady County, very proud of it, very proud to be in this community. And I'd like the panelists to reflect on what can we do as an audience that is sitting here, have viewed the film, we've talked about it for nearly an hour now. What do we do leaving these doors right tonight? What do we do tomorrow to brighten the day from a manufacturing point of view and for prosperity and growth for our community as a whole and as an individual? Real briefly, let's go down in order. I'm gonna go to reverse order and end with you, Congressman. So, Ken, what would you like us to do once we leave tonight's theater?
I think we have to have longer memories. I think we go to things like this, we hear the message, we say that's right, and we're all busy, and within 3 days we forget.
Thank you. Dr. Lord?
Collaborate with the community colleges, share the great work that we are doing, come and explore, speak with faculty and staff, work collaboratively with our workforce development for retraining or enhancing skill sets, and continue to advocate to increase funding to support the work that we do in workforce development.
Brian.
Okay, the simple thing I would say is just take the time to look at a label, find out where something's made.
Hey, Brian, real quickly, how do we know it was all made in the USA?
Based on the fact that if it says made in the USA on the label, it has to pass a litmus test, or else there can actually be legally charged with kind of similar to fraudulent activity. But it has to have a certain amount of componentry in it. It doesn't have to be 100%, but it has to be somewhere close. I think it's north of 60 or 75% to be considered made in the United States. But if you can't find something that is made in the United States, ask around, because the biggest thing we find when we're even talking to, when we talk about the government dollars that say you have to buy things in the United States, the first people we run into asking, how do I know if this is made in the United States, are contractors who have to go out and buy these things. How do I know if this waterproof's going to meet that litmus test? It's 60% components. We want a little bit more transparency. You want to know where these things are coming from. If it all can't be made here, talk to the companies and find out, where are they getting their things. Because, it's not going to be overnight that we're going to get more and more made in the United States. It's going to be little by little. So even if that percentage goes up from 60% to, say, 65%, you probably added another supplier and some jobs along the way that went into that product.
Thank you very much,
Maybe
Brian.
you can go to our Made in New York website.
Absolutely. I might tell you that when I roll up my garden hose, I'm very proud that it's a Hanny reel made in Westerlo, Albany County. It really works well. It's going to last far longer than I will be on this earth. Trudy, what do we leave with?
So from the perspective of a manufacturer who is manufacturing in the region, this country, is to encourage our company to continue to do the best job that it can possibly do, so we have the best products. So there is no question among our customers around the world that this is the place to buy our products. And as the marketing person for the company, to make sure that everybody knows that quality is what comes from Superpower. And then, speaking, I think a couple of people have said this, when you think about what stores you're going to and how much you're paying for something, don't make the dollar be the most important thing, but really think about, who is this going to affect by buying something that may be a little bit less expensive? Is that really worth it in the end?
Alessandro, what do we leave tonight with? Maybe a pocket full of granola?
That's not a bad idea. Actually, I would say that everybody in here has the capacity to support American entrepreneurs. They're a big part of helping to level out the trade imbalances we have in the country, and it's really never been easier to support them. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and websites like those make it extremely easy to help a budding entrepreneur make a project of theirs a reality. And you get something from it too. Schenectady came out big for gatherers when we had our recent Kickstarter project, and I thank any of you that participated in that. So go out there and log on and look for opportunities to help other American-based manufacturers get their feet underneath them.
Very good. Thank you, Alessandro. Congressman, this is your biggest challenge tonight. You have less than a minute, but...
Look, I would encourage us to get deeply invested in the public policy debate. That would mean, in my opinion, making for progressive tax policy that provides for the investments we require, belt-tighten through getting rid of waste, inefficiency, and fraud, take those savings and further invest, and convince us that we're worthy of investment, that we go forward and invest in the new economy, in the research, in the infrastructure, in the workforce development, education, and higher ed, and then not suffocate the American dream. Make certain that we go forward and allow people to enjoy the prosperity and really respect our working families and middle-income community. They've taken it on the chin for far too long. And trade deficit as another policy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please continue your acknowledgement of our panelists. I think they did a terrific job. Thank you all. Okay, remember folks, as you leave, feel good about yourselves.